Yo, I'm really giving y'all the tea. Like, this is literally what I do. Some of y'all are editing your stomach when you should be editing the people out of the background. That's what we worried about, sis.
Hi, my name's Nikki, and you may know me from my pose ideas and photo tips on TikTok and Instagram.
Taking your selfies like this, I'm going to show you how to take a much better selfie using the natural light.
So photography today is highly edited, retouched, and it's often really hard to tell whether the image you're looking at presents a subject which was ever there in the first place. And this is done through editing, lighting, Photoshop, and the list continues. So today we're going to be talking about how death and mortality present themselves within the culture of photography. And our thesis question for today is, how does photography capture and question the notion of death and mortality amongst its subjects when it acts as an immortal medium itself? And we're going to be using two different research papers to explore this topic. The Batchin paper published in 2000 titled Ectoplasm, Photography in the Digital Age, and Wentz paper published in 2014 called The Allure of the Selfie, Instagram and the New Self-Portrait. So in Batchin's paper published in 2000, he talks about how computer editing and software makes it really difficult to tell whether images are actually presenting the truest form of the subject. And it means that viewers of photography are losing their faith in photography as a medium itself, because photography was originally known as showing true forms of the subject, and it depicted truth and evidence of what was actually happening in the scene. Batchin stated that a given person may not look exactly as the photograph now portrays them, but we can at least be certain that they were once in front of the camera. We can be sure that they are at some point present in time and space. Well, let's explore if that actually is still true. So how does the presence of digital imaging and social media kind of underpin this comment that he's made, and how does it sort of tear apart the actual truth of the statement? Batchin further states in his paper, the production of any and every photograph involves practices of intervention and manipulation of some kind or another. I actually really agree with this statement, because I think there isn't a single photo that's taken where lighting doesn't take an effect, positioning doesn't take an effect, the way you're holding the camera doesn't take an effect. So there's always a level of manipulation present in the actual art of the photograph itself.
Okay, let's use this picture for example. So I'll go to tools and I'll go to expand. See, now it's gonna let me expand the top of the picture. Do y'all know what I mean? Like when you just need more space in your picture. Like this picture, if I was to post it, it would be too close. So you could use this to like expand it.
And especially young people today particularly fall victim to this notion in the art of taking a selfie. I know myself, I 100% manipulate the way I take a selfie. I'm changing my appearance, I'm changing the photo post-production through editing.
I can honestly say that photos like this and photos like this and photos like this and photos like this underwent so much editing, where I'd use the app PicsArt to pick the best face and to pick the best body, merging them together for the perfect photo.
And this culture is really explored well in Wentz 2014 paper, so let's dive into that one a little bit more. So the process that Batchin was describing, where people are editing photos post-production, Wentz describes this as a detachment from reality. Wentz states that we fragment ourselves through electronic mediums for the sake of expression, but lose a portion of ourselves during the process. Within the paper, Wentz discusses the famous camera company Kodak and how they claim that they can capture and stop time through a photo. Kodak sold consumers the illusion of control by telling them that the camera could pause the ticking clock, or rather, extend the clock through extra rolls of film.
So you can capture those wonderful moments you may have been missing. The new Kodak Disc Camera.
Picture a brand new world. Picture a brand new world.
This is really similar to a temporal theme highlighted in Batchin's paper, where he explores a photography experiment that was conducted where the photographer took 3 separate photos at 3 different times throughout the day, in the morning, in noon, and in the evening. And this experiment was to capture how lighting changes at each different point in time and how the object looks different with the different lighting. And the whole point of this experiment was to show that time is fluid and how the passing of time presents itself as a linear sequence through the changing shadows and light presentations in the photo. Now, I actually had a go at doing this experiment myself, and I am no professional photographer. I kind of just take photos for Instagram and that's it. So here's my little gnome, my garden gnome that I took pictures of in the morning, at noon, and in the evening. And obviously you can see the lighting has changed so much in each image. Even though the gnome itself hasn't moved, it looks completely different at the different times throughout the day. So Batchin said that in stopping or turning back time, photography appeared to be once again playing with life and death, where photography is a visual inscription of the passing of time and therefore the passing of the viewer. And Wendt also establishes a link between this and social media practices today. They stated that those who repeatedly take selfies may experience numbness and amplification more intensely than others. These types of users seem addicted to this activity and therefore produce images of themselves multiple times in the day. So how has the subject changed between each captured image? Is it even still the same subject in the photo if the lighting's changed, the hair's changed, the makeup's changed because of the time passing in the day? Are they even the same version of themselves in the photo? So with the different versions present within the photo, Batchin kind of creates a link of death to this actual notion itself. So in earlier times of photography, Batchin stated that older techniques surrounded the notion in that if one wanted to appear lifelike within a photo, they first had to appear dead. Interestingly, I find that this notion of acting dead in order to get the perfect photograph is probably something that we still do today in social media photos. A current trend in editing techniques is the desire to make photographs appear aged through filters and editing processes. Wendt stated that the filter function simulates the look of physical age on photographs. For example, the filter function generates instant nostalgia by replicating physical signs of age. And I was doing a little bit of research on this kind of particular trend on social media where people were recreating the look of film cameras and using like filters on their phone to change the way a digital photograph looks and to make it look like it was taken years and years ago on a film camera. And here's my dog Peaches, and I followed that tutorial that you just saw to try and make it look like Peaches was in some weird film photo booth. So I mean, it was a pretty successful technique. Wendt explored this argument using the French philosopher Gaston Bachelard's using the French philosopher Gaston Bachelard's theory that people desire to look at themselves as if they were already dead. This is achieved through the use of filter functions. So bringing it back to social media, Instagram allows us to disassociate from how we truly look and disassociate from time itself through the use of filters, and thus we're disconnected from the notion of death itself because we've already seen ourselves painted in a completely different time, age, and light.
Place the camera further from you and then zoom in. This is because of phone and camera lenses, which tend to distort your face and body.
So both Batchin and Wendt really explored these themes of time, death, mortality, and changing photographs within their papers. But how does this relate to my thesis question? Well, let's talk about it. So we can use the concepts explored in both of these papers to address my research question of how does photography capture and question the notion of death and mortality amongst its subjects, when it acts as an immortal medium itself. Photography questions death and mortality of its subjects as their forms and structures are manipulated pre- and post-production. This is done with lighting, form, posing, makeup, editing, retouching, the whole shabam. Photography captures a version of the subject that arguably never truly existed in the first place, as the subject presented in the photo doesn't reflect its truest version anymore, due to the passing of time. So does this mean that photography immortalizes its subjects? Living subjects may have physically passed away since the photo was captured, yet their presence and likeness lives on within the photo, which is able to be viewed at any time.
A really cool example of this is my fish Abraxas, and here you can see the growth that his fins made in just a month, which I captured on my Instagram story. And a slightly more morbid example is the goldfish Paleo and Midas, who unfortunately were eaten by a cat after going into an outdoor pond.
So Wendt stated that friends and family who have passed away seemingly live on forever through their user profiles, as though embalmed within the data itself. social networks continued to host profiles of the deceased as if they were still alive. So one could say that Instagram users create and carry their own virtual tombs and memorials. I think that perhaps the photographs never actually capture the truest version of the subject because of the temporal fluidity of existence itself. We're never actually truly living the now as it's already happened. So how can a photograph really capture the actual subject when the actual subject doesn't exist anymore? So Batchen and Wendt draw attention to this idea and explore these ideas, with Wendt drawing attention to the widely subscribed culture of death, which underpins social media today.
So when we're scrolling through our social media feeds, it can be tricky to determine if the subject was captured dead or alive.